Hello there, kia ora. The Dunedin City Council race is so fascinating to me for a couple of honestly very weird reasons. The first is that this area has more candidates who know my cousin Murray than any other that I've come across in the country, including the one he lives in. The second is because there's actually a really secret rivalry that voters might finally be able to settle that's been running as long as I've been alive. Star Trek or Star Wars? Here, let me explain. After the top job is the largest number of candidates in the country, and they include someone who grew up in a castle, a former circus ringleader, the leader of the Silly Hat Party, a vampire, a hypnotherapist, a video game programmer, and so much more. And a lot of the candidates bring into the job a whole bunch of really interesting real world experience, real world governance, real world business acumen, experience in a range of social issues from things like brain injury awareness through to housing, gardening, climate change mitigation, journalism, art publicity, art itself. And those experiences, they cross over all kinds of candidates. Like it's a truly unique and fascinating race of people that are out there trying to get your vote. And across it all is the largest candidate following of science fiction properties that I've come across of any race in the country. Weirdly, the progressive candidates who speak about climate change, community, and public transport, they seem to be in the Star Trek camp, while those that talk about business acumen, financial prudence, and a focus on core essentials, they seem to be in the Star Wars camp. And as much as I love getting lost in a world of science fiction, if you couldn't tell, the biggest red flag in Dunedin is actually someone who seems to have fallen into a fictional world of their own creation. So, quick disclaimer, these are my red flags, which means that they're not going to be the same red flags for everyone, which is why you really do need to go out and research all of your candidates. And with such a large field of candidates running, because Dunedin elects the council at large, that can be quite a bit of research. You really should have started by now if you haven't already. Get to a candidate event where possible. But try and find candidates that match your vision or your goals or your aims for your home in the future. And most importantly, none of that is going to matter if you don't vote this election, so make sure that you're all lined up to do that. When it comes to mayoral candidates in Dunedin, the biggest red flag to me is clearly the self-described conspiracy theorist who thinks that they're both a sovereign and some kind of religious figurehead, Pamela Taylor. Her policy platforms include the dog whistles of a number of hard-right candidates that have shown up on other videos. Things like the removal of DEI, making sure you don't call the city Aotearoa, and getting rid of Māori wards. Dunedin doesn't have them, but you know. There's also comments about focusing on need-to-haves, not nice-to-haves. And like many of the candidates that have shown up on these videos, she also shares Hobson's Pledge content, Reality Check Radio, the Taxpayers Union. There's anti-science disinformation, there's pseudo-law believers, and New Zealand First and ACT content. Because why wouldn't there be? And her actual policy platform includes mentions of the New World Order, a globalist mRNA gene therapy plot, how censorship is a tool to control the masses and manipulate consent, and 5G tower radio frequencies are designed to lower our health. And at the last local election, the far-right think tank NZCPR and Whangarei Voices for Freedom linked election player Frank Newman threw his support behind her because it was unfair that the media was saying that she was a conspiracy theorist, even though that's how she described herself at the time, which wasn't actually long before she got put into a mental health facility for her own safety. Then you've got Liana McFarlane. Now, there's actually very little online about her, but there are a couple of dog whistles that pop up that have popped up in a number of other candidates' profiles, like wanting to leave LGNZ or demanding a rates cap, and being a member, albeit a passive one, of pseudo law group challenging councils. And there are a lot of candidates who are members that don't interact with that page. I think they're just sort of checking it out. But they're red flags to me because they mirror so many of the other hard right candidates' talking points that they're bringing into this election that we've seen. But as I said, very little to be able to dive into online, and another great reason to go to a Meet the Candidates event to find out directly from her what it is she stands for. And finally, when it comes to the mayoralty, there's Lee Vandervis, the person who I hear connected most often to the phrase, "Yeah, I'm sorry about him," from Dunedinites that I meet. But I will say this for Lee. He's actually one of the few people who raised red flags for me that's come out against the taxpayer union push and pledge for a rates cap, because he understands that as a standalone tool, they're ineffective and can actually be kind of dangerous. But over his time on council, he's constantly been on the end of complaints about behaviour and conduct. In 2019, the ODT reported that he was subject to 11 complaints of inappropriate behaviour. There was anger and shouting, insulting and threatening actions, unsubstantiated allegations of corruption, and intimidating behaviour against some of the council staff and members of the public. In September of 2019, there was another complaint after he allegedly verbally abused some staff over a parking ticket, which led to a really lengthy legal dispute. In the following term, there was more accusations of intimidation. He posted a bunch of anti-vaccine stuff. He advocated for the use of anti-parasitic horse medication ivermectin for treating COVID. He held an anti-lockdown protest event. He got supported by the Freedom and Rights Coalition Tamakis. He called the proposal for a rainbow crossing a piece of PC virtue signalling. When he was the only councillor to vote against it, he questioned the facts around September 11 attacks. He repeatedly fought against Māori representation, like the addition of Runanga members to committee processes, and claiming emergency management plans had a disproportionate focus on Māori inclusion, and his refusal to attend Council Te Pai Māori meetings, calling it undemocratic. And then you've got your council candidates, and to be honest, this is actually a surprisingly short list for how many people are running. You've got Cindy Elder. She actually ran for New Conservatives in the 2023 general election. You've got Anthony Kent, ACT. It'll be listed on the paperwork that he's ACT. There's Hugh O'Neill. He supports anti-trans beliefs. He doesn't believe in hate speech or the impacts that hate speech can have, and uses a whole bunch of US dog whistles like "for the people, by the people" on his website. He also shares content from Free Speech Union's Annie O'Brien. There's Sue Todd. She shared a strange US conspiracy site claiming that the USDA officer who was investigating Elon Musk's brain chip was fired over claims of culling chickens and scaremongering over the bird flu. According to official reports from the Trump White House at the time, she was actually removed along with 24 other USDA members for being quote-unquote partisan, and this was part of the clean-out for the department. She also follows a few freedom-aligned pages like Eyes Open New Zealand, the FU, Planet B Media, and the Taxpayers Union. On the Otago Peninsula Community Board, there's Amanda McLean. She's been known to post on Telegram pages like Back to Wellington. She's also been tagged in content from a former Voices for Freedom coordinator that ran in the last election, and shared content from Liz Gunn about a court case disallowing children from getting the COVID vaccine. And in Saddle Hill Community Board, you've got Solomon King, who ran for the New Conservatives back in 2020. That was the year they wanted to billet unwed mothers with family until a man was able to help them along. Last election, it actually felt like Dunedin was kind of overrepresented by candidates who spread conspiracies and fell for disinformation. But this time round, they're really outnumbered by people who bring a range of skills and passions to the table from across the political spectrum. But the challenges the next council face are no less contentious than other places have had to deal with. There's water reform. There's another debate about community rubbish disposal options. There's tensions around the way the CEO approaches and communicates with some elected members, and the fact that no one has yet found a way to decide if Star Wars or Star Trek is the better of the two. Voting is done by postal ballot, with voting forms coming out in early September. Dunedin City Council is using STV, so you need to rank your candidates. You don't have to rank every single candidate, though. And the future of Māori wards is not on the ballot here because Ngāi Tahu have a preferred different way to approach representation in the city. You can find more information about your local elections on your council website, or you can visit my website, alltheotherone.com/LG25 for a whole bunch of resources. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.